Alright, I have to apologize, I'm a little bit under the weather, so if my voice sounds kind of funky, that's what's going on. I want to go through a couple hypothesis testing problems. I'm going to be sending this to you guys. This is what I like to use. It's it's kind of like a flow diagram for how we do a hypothesis test, whether it's a one prop z test or a t-test. So I'm going to kind of describe this process over here, and we're going to work through a few problems. You might need to hit pause in this video because I'm going to work through this pretty quickly, so if you feel like you need to write some stuff down, you're welcome to do that. So this wording right here, I know the MathXL has a lot of multiple choice. That's not what you're going to be given. This is what it's going to look like when you take the final exam. So let's read the first problem. Again, these are not the same problems as your final exam problems, but they're close enough. The Booksmart Publishing Company has a series of reports of students having trouble logging into their website. Out of a random sample of 1,936 students, it found that 2.9% of those sampled reported trouble logging in during a given week. Use this information to test the hypothesis that the majority of students using the Booksmart website had trouble logging in. Use the significance level of 0.01. Step 1 says to state the null and alternative hypothesis. So I'm going to do that. Let's do H0 and H1. Okay, so we're going to also want to mark the claim too. So this says, I always look for this where it says to test the hypothesis. To test the hypothesis that the majority of students using the Booksmart website had trouble logging in. This is going to go on H1 because we are going to test that the majority, so we're going to test what is the majority? That's over half, right? So that P is greater than 0.5. So then what's the null hypothesis? The null hypothesis is going to be that P is equal to 0.5. Which one is the claim? It's going to be H1, right? So let's mark this one as the claim. Okay, so now let's look at this. So you see step 1 says identify your null and alternative hypothesis. Step 2 says mark your claim as H0 or H1. Now we're going to test our hypothesis. If we're given an x and an n value and a sample, we're going to use the one prop z test. You can see that we're using the p value, so we know we're going to do the one prop z test. And we need a few values for that. We need a p 0. We need an x value. And we need an n value. I'll show you the stuff in the calculator in a second, but let's go through this and try to figure this out. We also need a significance level. All right. So we're going to do the one prop z test. P0 is the proportion we are testing, which in this case it's going to be 0.5. Oops. The x is a little tricky here because x is the number of people who said they had trouble logging in. And when you read carefully, it says we have 1,936 students and that 2.9% of those had trouble logging in. So to get this x value, you're going to need to do 0.029 times 1,936. So 0.029 times 1036 gives us this value. But you need to round this to a whole number. We always round the x to a whole number. So in this case, it's going to be 30. Finally, n is the number that we total people we asked from the sample, which was 1936. And our significance level is 0.01. Whoops, 0.01. All right. So I'm going to move over to the calculator now, and we're going to go to Stat and Test, and we're going to select the one prop z test. Hit Enter. We're going to plug in these values. Again, on your test, I encourage you to put these values, write these values down, so even if you get the wrong answer, I can try to give you some partial credit for at least knowing what the setup was. 1936, and this is the last thing. This is our claim right here. We want to make sure that this inequality symbol matches up directly with what's going on here. So you kind of see the alligator is opening towards the left, towards the P. So we want to make sure we select this one right here. Now we're going to calculate that value. And so it says, sorry, I'm going to move this down. It says find the p-value. The p-value was 0. I'm sorry, what was the p-value? P-value is 1. Now it says, can we reject the null hypothesis? This is where we're going to focus down here, because this is going to be very specific about how we write our conclusion. So let me back up that a little bit. Is P greater than alpha or is P less than alpha? Well, let's look at what alpha is. Alpha is your significance level, right? So if you look at this, alpha is equal to 0.01. Which is bigger, this value or 1? 1 is larger, right? Since 1 is larger, P is greater than alpha. So if P is greater than alpha, then we cannot reject the null hypothesis. So I would circle no, we cannot reject the null hypothesis. And now here's the part that everybody's having trouble with, and I encourage you to kind of focus in on. The language we're going to use in the final conclusion is dependent on which one is our claim. Since our claim is H1, we are going to use the word support. So we are going to say, since we cannot reject the null, we cannot support the claim that the majority of students had trouble finding. So we had to use the word support in our final conclusion because H1 was our claim. And that's what I kind of said here. So if we use the word, we're going to say we cannot reject the null, but if H1 is our claim, we're going to say we cannot support the claim. All right, this video is running a little long, so I'm going to actually pause it and upload this, and then I'm going to take care of the next 2 examples. So make sure you check out the next video where we're going to do one with means, and we're going to also use one where the null hypothesis is the claim.